ICQ Podcast episode 356, QSO Today Summer Expo. Well, hello and welcome, fellow Amateur Radio enthusiasts, to this, our 356th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast. Supported this episode by Kevin Parquet, Kilo Charlie 1, Oscar India Zulu, Gary Bridges, Whiskey Alpha Zero, Foxtrot Mike Victor, Bob Colzoni, and Roy Jones, VK6 Romeo Romeo, of course along with our monthly and annual subscription donors. In this episode, Martin M1MRB is joined by Chris, Mike Zero, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike Zero, Sierra Golf Lima, Ed, DD5, Lima Papa, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, to discuss the latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin, M6BOY, rounds up the news in brief. In this episode, we feature a discussion with Eric, the founder of the QSO Today show, in relation to the QSO Today Expo that's coming up in a fortnight's time. Well, as always, it's our wonderful donors that keep this show advert-free and paying its way on the internet. So along with our monthly subscription donors, we'd like to thank Kevin, Kilo Charlie 1, Oscar India Zulu, who said thanks for all you do to keep us well informed and well educated about everything going on in the amateur radio hobby, and greetings from the great state of Maine in the USA. So thank you very much, Kevin, for your very kind donation. We have Roy Jones, VK6 Romeo Romeo, drops us a birthday donation for our 13th birthday, which we're celebrating in July. He said, great show, guys. Happy birthday. So thank you very much. As I mentioned, Gary Bridges, Whiskey Alpha 2, Victor, Mike Victor, and Bob Colzoni also, sent us one-off donations as well. Then the month of July is always a great month for us for picking up donations for our birthday, but it does slow down into August, so please help us out and keep us doing what we do by visiting www.icqpodcast.com/donate. Very simple logic. Think of the value you found from the show that you've had over listening, and turn that into a monetary value, and either select one of the options on the page, or say just send an amount of your choosing to us to show your appreciation of what we do, and say that'd be greatly appreciated, and we plough back into the show and the running costs, etc. So we'd really appreciate you thinking of us. Right, now we're going to join Martin, Chris, Martin, Ed, Frank, and Bill to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest news in our hobby, including jamming investigation on 40 metres and catching a repeater troublemaker red-handed. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, welcome to episode 356 of the ICQ podcast, and tonight's round table for that episode. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Evening, Martin.
Hi, mate. I've also got Mr. Martin Rothwell, who's probably going to try and get me into trouble, M0SGL. Hi, Mike.
There's no trying about it. You know you'll be first in line to get yourself in trouble, and it's the contents of that cup in front of you, marked Costa, other brands are available, that is going to cause the trouble.
Probably. Moving over to Germany, we have Mr. Ed Durrant, DD5LP.
Evening all.
Evening, Ed. And you sound like Dixon and Doc Green, but then most people wouldn't understand that reference.
Wouldn't even understand that. That's right.
Yeah, they'll all be googling it on Sunday morning.
It'll be on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah. Moving to the other side of the pond, we have Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH. Hi, Frank.
And now, from across the pond, where he's been walking the dog, it's our US correspondent, Frank. Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel.
Martin, that was my walk-in intro from the September 18th, 2013 episode of the ICQ podcast. Hello, glad to be here again.
I thought I recognised it, Frank. I thought, he's playing his old walk-in jingle. We're a good one.
You know, I feel very urged to play. I'm not going to, but I feel very left out that I feel like I need to play one of my radio jingles now, but I'm not going to.
You can play one of your radio jingles.
No, I'm not going to do it now. They're very outdated.
As long as it's not copyright protected, you can do it.
No, they're very cheesy. They're very outdated now.
Okay. And last but not least, we have Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Hi, Bill.
Good evening, Martin. Good evening, everyone. I feel left out because I didn't bring a jingle. And I also forgot to say good evening, everybody.
Yeah, good evening, Bill. And do you know what, Bill? I don't have a jingle either, so, yeah. Hey, we're just unique, Bill. Right,
Yep.
let's have a look at these here news stories. And first one, FCC investigates alleged jamming on 40 metres. That's a bit naughty if things are getting jammed. It's only alleged. But Frank, what's your thoughts?
You know, we've had problems on 40 meters from, I don't want to say legitimate jamming, but just simply other commercial broadcasters at certain times where the band runs long. But this is different. This is clearly the appearance of jamming. And it seems to have repeatedly occurred, not just the one-off. And to the extent that the FCC's Enforcement Bureau can get more troops engaged, they are doing that. They've been helped by some hams using some of the Kiwi SDR TDOA, time difference on arrival technology. Neil Schaffauer in one of the magazines, I don't know if it's Radio User or Practical Wireless, has illustrated that technology in several issues in that magazine very elegantly. But it seems to point to the island of Cuba. So this is a fairly serious incident.
Yeah, it's a shame because it could just be one disgruntled ham, or it could be more than that. Bill, what do you think?
Something's going on. A lot of the evenings I've been turning on 40 to see if it's still there. I don't have directional antennas at my location, so it could be, it literally could be anywhere in the darkness at least. But usually, around sunset and then into the evening, there's something noise there between roughly 7.1 and 7.2. Looks funky on the pan adapter for sure. Some people are still making QSOs over it, which I thought was kind of interesting. The other thing I thought was really interesting is that the IARU Region 2 president hasn't reported that anyone's complained yet to them, which I think somebody would have by now if they would have a pretty good idea where it's coming from. That's my only hesitation is it looks like Cuba, but it might not be. It might not be the government. It might be somebody else. There's a lot of questions in this whole thing right now. So more research is needed.
Yeah, I agree with you. We don't want to start an international argument and find it was something quite legit by accident. Ed, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I can't really say that much. I haven't heard any of this jamming on 40 metres. It's possible it's in a null of my antenna because I've never worked Cuba either on 40 metres, or the Caribbean at all. So yeah, I can't really add anything to it, except I believe there was a special event station as well, W4C, which was being jammed. So, which was to publicise the hard times that the people of Cuba are going through at the moment. So it could be. Let's see what the FCC come back with. They're the people with the equipment and the skills to actually find out what's going on.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's an interesting one. I must admit, over in the UK, maybe I don't have a very good 40-metre antenna, but I haven't heard much on 40 metres recently. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Well, I first thing is could this be someone's fridge or someone's TV that as we know has happened before? If you're doing it intentionally, I wonder why. Part of me says good on the FCC for investigating things, but there's an interesting comment there. The FCC is committed to supporting free flow of information, ensuring that the internet remains open for everyone. Net neutrality, or do we not want to talk about that, FCC? The apparent jamming as well showed up apparently after anti-government protesters took to the streets in Cuba. Now, maybe this isn't proven, but if you're protesting, against the government, why are you attacking radio hams? Why are you not going for things that the government would be using? I mean, would that not be a better target than 40 meters, which in reality the government probably don't really care about?
No, I believe the interference is supposed to be coming from the rumours, to be coming from government stations, blocking out amateurs trying to communicate back to the US.
Right.
That's what I'd
Yeah.
assumed, because it talks about coinciding with these protests. So I assumed it was that.
So it's
Who
possible
knows?
that the government could be jamming it. Interesting.
Yeah, because there's a lot of Cuban expats in Florida that run 40-meter nets.
Now remember, U.S. folks have had problems with microwave exposure sickness. Connection? Who knows? Government still is the common denominator.
Yeah, it's got to be
And
somebody.
this is alleged. We should say this. We don't know this for sure.
All of it's alleged. You're right, Martin. Alleged.
We're reporting on it. Don't come after us,
Yeah.
government.
And if somebody's running enough power to block the whole of the 40-meter band, then it's got to be somebody quite serious, I would suggest. You're probably right. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, not much more to add, really. I mean, we don't really know the details. Like I say, only that this seems to be, according to the story, it seems to be happening, as a result of these protests potentially, and there's government crackdown. So, well, it's only a lower portion of 40 meters. So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out maybe over time, depending on what they find out.
I mean, do they not have things like 80 meters as well and other bands they could use? If we'll block 40 meters, okay, I'll go to 80 meters. I'll go to 20 meters.
Yeah, I don't think 80 meters is as common for folks to chat on from Cuba. I very rarely hear stations on there. I do hear them frequently on 40 meters. I'm not sure. Well, Frank's closer than I am, so you might hear them on 75 and 80 meters. But I typically don't seem to hear them this far north.
Not very much, Bill.
And coming back on something Martin said, my understanding is it's not blocking out, and our American friends can perhaps confirm this, it's not blocking out half the band, it's spot frequencies that are being hit. So where nets are being run.
All right, because I've heard very little on 40 meters recently, and I did wonder whether it was just sunspots, but okay. I've probably got a very poor 40-meter antenna then, but there you go. Right, moving to our next news story. This is a worrier. Chris slipped this one in just before we went to record, and it's a good news story. It's not necessarily amateur radio, but it does involve radio frequencies and satellites, and something we probably need to just be aware of is what happens to British ships, when it could be any country's ships really, when the satellites don't work, because everybody is relying on satellite navigation these days, and if it gets jammed or spoofed, you got a problem. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, this one appeared today on BBC News. I just thought it was a good one. So this was a chap called Lord West, who is an very senior, I think he was the first Sea Lord. I'm not sure, I presume that's
The first Sea Lord.
Yeah, I presume that's a very senior person in the Royal Navy back in the day. So he's been talking about, what's the backup plan in the case of satellites either failing or being jammed or, something like that. What's the backup? Because satellites, in fact, it's not just navigation, although clearly we've got lots and lots of things that rely on, GPS and other satellite type navigation. You've also got communications. When we spoke to, a few years ago, we spoke to Mike Lowenstein, who's the radio operator on a British Antarctic survey ship, and he told us, well, all their communications now, he does a bit of amateur radio as a hobby, but all the real communications are by satellite now. They've got a big dish on the top of the ship, and that pretty much all communication goes via that. And this article, what seems to point out, what they seem to have done though, is it was saying back in the 1960s, everything was done using kind of similar technology to today's mobile phones, kind of, fairly low-tech VHF type technology, and there was no GPS, etc. And what seems to have happened is everyone's gone satellite-based communications, then all the old traditional way of communicating is now gone, so there is no backup. And I think he was just kind of raising the concern that, satellite communications are vulnerable either to, failure or to deliberate denial of service, someone jamming it or other things. And, he even talks about having to go back to the old days of looking at the stars to navigate, that sort of thing, which is, you think, blimey, that's back in the days of ships with sails and that sort of thing. So it's It's an interesting one, and yeah, it just raises the sometimes the old way to do things. That you may put something new in, but you don't get rid of the old technology because one day you might have to rely on it.
You certainly might have to. And I suppose also they've shut down a lot of the radio stations, and a lot of shortwave radio stations are shut down. So you can't even triangulate to find out roughly where you are by triangulating off three, say, shortwave broadcasters.
I don't know much about marine navigation. I know a little bit about aircraft navigation. I think actually they're probably fairly similar. So I know that we have these non-directional beacons, which are basically AM radio stations that aircraft can use to navigate. You can use a directional aerial and point at something, and okay, right, that's that in that direction is that particular beacon. But I think a lot of that in the marine world has now been switched off. There's still these things still exist in the aviation world. So I know aircraft use GPS nowadays, but they also use non-directional beacons and things called VORs, and I've forgotten what VOR stands for, but again, it's another sort of beacon that's used to navigate. So that's there. They've got a number of options in aircraft to navigate, but it sounds like the other options for marine navigation seem to have fallen away.
Yeah, understandable. Martin, what's your thoughts on this one?
What happens when satellites don't work? I mean, there's lots of things that can happen, in my mind when things don't work. Do they not have HF radios on board? When they talk about GPS, isn't there more than one GPS network anyway? One's owned by America, another is owned, I think, by a European country. Chris mentioned like the directional beacons. I was going to say, aren't there like buoys that are floating in the sea that are transmitting beacons? Because I'm sure that we reported on one that went bad a while ago. There's various, satellite phone companies. You're not going to block all of them at once. They all use different frequencies. I refuse personally to believe that all satellites could be hacked at the same time. And go back to what did we do before tech existed? Compass, maps. How did they navigate like that? I mean, maybe that's a requirement for the
stars.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe that's a requirement for ship captains. There's your easy answer. If all the tech fails, learn how to navigate, the old-fashioned way.
Well, I think they have to do that. I think they've got these devices, and I've forgotten the name now. The things that measure the distance measure the angle to stars and that sort of thing.
Sextant.
That's the ones. And that's what they think. I think actually, ships, captains, etc., probably sort of navigators are probably still trained to do that. Whether they're probably still trying to do Morse code as well. Whether they're actually able to still do it or not, I don't know. Probably not something you have to do very often. Maybe they should start practicing it a bit. I don't know.
But there you go. There's your backup solution. What happens when the satellites don't work? Got the kit already.
Get the Indian police to train them.
Well, something else it talks about on the article as well. It talks about really modern day ships are just, full of computers, and it's just a huge computer. I remember, Martin, you remember this, and we were on HMS Belfast a few years ago, and Belfast, bear in mind, that's an 80-something-year-old ship, so very little in terms of certainly computer technology on board. But we looked across, there was a modern Royal Navy ship that was docked aboard the Belfast, and aboard next to it, basically. And we looked across at the bridge, and that was just a massive computer screens, and it's very, very different, a different way of selling, I'd imagine, these days.
Certainly was. It looked like it was controlled by a joystick, not a ship's wheel. But I wouldn't be 100% sure on that one. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, this is reminding me of a couple of other stories we've covered. With military, I'm pretty sure New Zealand and the US have said that they want to retain HF communications in the case that satellites might be knocked out at time of war, or for whatever reason they're not there. You do get radio blackouts on HF as well, of course, so it's not a perfect backup, but it is going back to what was there before. And the other story I remember from maybe a year ago or 18 months ago was about the Loran shore stations, of which majority have been closed down. However, I'm pretty sure it was Southampton had either kept one running or put a new one in because they wanted it as backup for when ships are docking, because if the GPS fails, they're going to be running into piers and sinking ships in the harbour and all the rest of it. And apparently they believed that Loran was still a valid alternative. I presume there was mention in this article of eLoran, so I presume that's the new version that feeds into your computer systems instead of GPS. So how many Loran shore stations there are still, and whether any new ones are being set up would be interesting to find out, because that would make a lot more sense. The idea of the sextant is good, except during the day. You need the stars. You won't see the stars during the day. And quite honestly, I think if we lost all of the navigational satellites, yeah, we'd probably have other things to worry about. But having a fallback for any technical system is what you should always have. But unfortunately, the accountants often get in there and say, no, we're not keeping the old system because we can save money by not having it. And 50% of the time they're right.
Too true. Frank, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I've got one humorous thought and then a couple of serious ones. If for our non-United Kingdom listeners, I think I speak for you. I absolutely adore the titles. The First Sea Lord, Lord West of Spithead. I mean, that is right in a Star Wars, one of the Star Wars movies. Now, with the humor out of the way, I mean, I just love those titles. I think Martin has a great point about attacking and knocking out. That can have a lot of different elements to it, knocking out. But I think spoofing satellite data, where you're unknowingly, your system is guiding you and it all appears well until you run aground or, you arrive where you don't want to arrive. That's one threat that I think is very critical. Number two, as Ed mentioned, the HF needs for military, there's a lot of traffic on that. And let's go back to a story we covered some months, if not years ago. Flex Radio Systems, along with Raytheon, who got bought, changed its name, and now I read they're kind of back being called Raytheon with the new company again. They have $1 billion with a B, $1 billion plus contract to do SDR HF communications for the U.S. Air Force. And that's not just words, that's data in addition, and that kind of information. So I think the First Sea Lord, Lord West, has some great point, frankly, and I suspect military and HF are going to be there for a long time. For our listeners who may be aware of the Spectrum Monitor magazine, we've had Thomas Witherspoon, who writes in that magazine a lot, here on a feature interview a year or so ago on shortwave listening. There is a military listening column with some very well regarded specialists who routinely publish listening to military on HF. So for our listeners who might be interested in that, the Spectrum Monitor might be a place for you to turn to. But it's an important story, Martin.
Yeah, I quite like it, and it is a worrying story. But but we can't stick our head in the we're not ostriches, and this is a naval one. So let's say we can't stick our head under the sea and hope it all goes away. Bill, last words on this one. What do you think?
I think everybody encapsulated everything correctly. I do remember having that discussion, Ed and Frank, and I also remember, in addition to, we were talking about like 3 or 4 different technologies they were shutting down, including the LORAN system. But the one that struck out my mind was sending data and communications through automatic link establishment, the ALE. That's what MIL standard 188, 141 something B. I vaguely recall that. That's still around, and it's in use, at least with the DoD here on the state side, so maybe the U.S. Navy's still using it. But the idea that everybody appears to be focusing only on satellite communications and navigation with a lot of these shipping companies is very worrying, because the one thing the article did talk about was the Chinese Navy were overloading the receivers and jamming the GPS signals and the data signals. Likewise, in 2019, the British ship was got spoofed satellite data and went into the wrong place where it shouldn't have been and got picked up. So I think there's a security component to this as well, to have a backup system. And yes, there is no stars at evening except one, or during the day except one. I wanted to throw that in there. There is one star during the day, but it doesn't really help you navigate.
It's pretty bright.
It's pretty bright and pretty
Can't
close.
miss it.
I had to throw
Bill,
that.
that
comment
was
in
the
there.
old Klingon trick to get the Star Trek into the wrong zone.
Yeah. And I'm out of coffee already, guys, and we're only halfway through. This is not good.
Certainly, Bill. Certainly. Well, I have to limit myself. I was to get feisty. So, very good news story. I think worth discussing, even though it was an amateur radio, because it could affect a lot of us in various ways. So, worthwhile covering. Next news story. A repeater troublemaker was caught red-handed. Now, this is a story in Switzerland. It's a guy who's been jamming a repeater. I can't understand why people jam repeaters. I'm sure we have a number of people doing repeater abuse in the London area on various repeaters, and it probably happens all around the world. I don't understand why they do it. Bill, do you want to go first on this one?
Yes. I don't understand why they do it either. The simple fact is that the person was causing it. They were traced down through using direction finding teams. They got talked to, happened again. Just don't jam the repeaters, please. And if you know somebody, talk them out of it, because it's really a waste of time.
Yeah, I think because most of us don't want to see somebody else have all their equipment confiscated and a big fine. So you're right, Bill. Talk them out of it. Martin, you're a repeater keeper. What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, they said they were broadcasting DTMF and sirens, and my initial thought on that in the first instance was, no, you got a Baofeng then. Mind you, my old company had badly programmed high terrors that set off sirens every 2 minutes, and that was driving them all mad. And they had to get the PMR company in very quickly to come and fix that, which didn't go down well because they went with the cheapest PMR company who weren't based in London. They had to come all the way back down to reprogram them all. I wonder why people do this. What have they got to achieve? But the main question is, what do you do when you catch someone? You know, if you find someone, you feel, okay, it's this guy, he's doing it. We know it's him doing it. Do you approach them? Would your regulator, Ofcom, FCC, whoever, actually do anything if you pass the information to them? In London, I've heard building sites operating on 433-500, which of course is the UK 77's calling channel. You know, what can you do about that? You know, you can report it to Ofcom, and, you know, if they're not too busy, maybe they'll go and deal with it. But, you know, they're more interested in the people that are paying the big money for the services, the broadcasters, the mobile phone giants and things like that. I remember back to days in the CB days, hearing people that were, you know, just generally being abusive and keying over people and things like that. And I remember there were people out there that were forcibly removing equipment, putting pins in people's coax, removing antennas from people's roofs. Now, I don't want to encourage that behaviour, but what should you do? I understand they spoke to this guy and he just played dumb, but did that scare him off? I mean, did someone have to put the wind up him, you know, scare him before he stopped doing it? I don't know.
I think some people are just looking for help. Maybe they have a mental issue. They're just looking for help, looking for a bit of love, looking to be recognised. But come on, guys, there's a better way of doing it, you know, in fairness. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
I think it's a similar mindset to people that go onto Twitter or Facebook, or the kind of sit behind it. I think it's one of those things, you can be anonymous, can't you? You can be on a repeater, you don't say anything, you just, key it up or play music or play tones, etc. You are anonymous, I guess on the radio at least you can be DF, we can track you down, I suppose, to a degree. But ultimately, it's unlikely, and frankly, it's just an anonymous thing. It's someone who's probably a bit sad, who I don't know, just has the best way, we always say on our training courses, the best way to deal with it is to ignore it, because what they're looking for is a reaction, and if you don't give them a reaction, they're going to get bored really quickly and probably just give up. So those people that engage and try to talk to them and all that sort of thing, that's exactly what they want. So, I don't know why people do it, but I think the way that these things are dealt with typically are the repeater if it happens a lot, typically what happens is the repeater gets closed down for a while, or maybe for a couple of weeks, or they turn to go on to low power, and it affects everyone, but unfortunately, there's a few idiots in the world that can cause that sort of thing. But, you know, like I say, it's kind of similar to what people do on social media, try and hide behind someone, you know, do something. And actually, you know, in reality, it's just someone's a little bit sad who's probably got a few issues that, you know, is just best ignored.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it gets sorted. Frank, what's your thoughts on this one?
My German is 9, but when I saw the story had in flagrante in it, I thought, wow, this is going to be a real juicy story. Ed will have to coach me on what in flagrante actually means there. I suspect that in the U.S., the connotation of someone being caught in flagrante has a specific meaning that may not prove to be the general one. Usually involves a husband who comes home early. I agree with what's been said. I was involved, 30 years ago with a team who was studying people who were caught setting forest on fire, forest incendiarist. And while it's a very different crime, the root causes are very similar to what's been said. The root cause was the motivation of being known in the sense that I caused something to happen that everybody's paying attention to. And I think that's why repeaters get wider attention than just, say, on 40 meters, the story we just covered, you're blocking a small net or one person. We have some of that here in the States at the Volunteer Monitor Program, monitors, for example. So I think the group is spot on, and it's just a matter of Martin's comment, what do you do? If you don't do something, they'll likely continue. So usually authorities get involved at that point.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's when it all gets horrible and people get very tearful. Ed, last words on this one?
Yeah, I'll jump in to the other Martin's question about the building site in London. You just tell the UK Ofcom that you can't open your car door anymore, and they'll be around there like a shot.
Oh yeah, because they do that for the non-protected frequency of 433.92, don't they? Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, Ofcom are the people to call, definitely.
Yeah, but switching over to the other Ofcom, because the regulator in Switzerland is also called Ofcom. In this particular story, the amateurs involved were trying to do this in a self-regulating way. And as far as I can read from the story, they did not involve their regulator, or have not as yet. The hope being that now that the culprit knows that he's been caught and everybody knows who he is, that he'll stop. If he doesn't, then of course they've got their evidence to go to their regulator, and I would suspect that the Swiss Ofcom may well move on it, especially when all the work's been done for them already. So I would like to probably see some action there if he offends again. Another thought on this: if we didn't have analog 2 meter and 77 repeaters anymore, and they were all only digital voice, I think most of the digital voice modes you actually can identify the handheld or the mobile radio, because you have to have a code in there before you can get into the system. And certainly with DMR radios, there is a way of running a kill command from the repeater back out, I believe, that would, if once you know which device it is that's jamming, the next time it tries to jam, it'll just get shut down and won't be able to be used anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct to some extent. I know you can stun some PMR radios. Whether you can stun an Anytone DMR radio, I don't know. With things like System Fusion, we can, you're supposed to put your call sign in. A lot of people don't, and I don't let people on the network that don't have their call sign programmed in through XP. I insist people program their call signs into their radio, but it does come up with a radio unique identifier.
Right.
But you can't, unfortunately, block it from the repeater, but you can block it from going through your gateway into the network.
Yeah.
So you can stop it to some extent, but I couldn't stop the repeater rebroadcasting in London, for example.
Locally, yeah.
But I think with something like D-Star, and this is a bit of a, I think a bit of a maybe a timing thing when it first came out. There's no security, there's no authentication as part of D-Star. So when you all you do is type into your radio your call sign, you don't have a password. So anyone could put in your call sign into their radio and pretend to be you, unfortunatally. I don't think there's a way.
But do you have a hardware ID of the device?
I don't think so. I don't know for certain.
Okay.
You certainly do on DMR and Fusion.
Yeah.
But things have been improved over the time. We can't knock older technology for not thinking.
I think if D-Star was being implemented today, they probably would have implemented that as well, because I think nowadays they're probably a little bit more security focused, but I think at the time perhaps that wasn't at the forefront of their minds.
The only advantage you do have on digital stuff is if the person persists, you have a way of tracking it down to the repeater or the hotspot via its IP address. It's a lot of work, but it could be done to track somebody back that way.
Yeah, and if you've got a repeater keeper, you can reach out to that keeper and say, hey, we're getting a problem from someone on your repeater. Can you help us? And most repeater keepers are like, yeah, no problem, I'll just block it.
Yeah, and if it's somebody on a hotspot, bearing in mind they have to, the hotspot connects to the internet, and you might think you're 192.168.1 whatever. You have a external address, and that external address will show up in the packets going through and can be tracked. Put it that way. A little bit of work, but it could be done. So it's not ideal to try and hack a digital system, put it that way. There are too many ways you can get found out, in my opinion. Right, let's move to the next one, because it's a shame when we have to talk about abuse. There's a new US experimental station, WL2XUP, is now operating on 80 meters or 40 megahertz band. Ed, do you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, can do. 8 meters or 40 megahertz is a very new band. Ireland has it, and I think it's Lithuania or Latvia and one of the old Yugoslav countries. So, and I think also South Africa. So it's very, very new. And what's happened in the US, the stories about this, is that a special experimental license has been issued, and to, who's this to? Lynn Holcomb, yeah, NI4Y. And he's actually running the experimental call sign WL2XUP on what is a beacon. And the good news is it was reported by EI7GL on his Blogspot website on the 18th of July that this experimental station was up and running. And by the 22nd of July, it was actually heard in the UK, so across the whole of the Atlantic. So I'm not sure how much he is running. The license says, oh, okay, that's interesting. As well as a beacon, a whisper beacon, it apparently is allowed to run FT8 under special skeds with an ERP of up to 100 watts. So it's a new band. It's propagation. How long it will take before other countries get this band, who knows? But it's all good to see if there's any major difference in propagation between 10 meters and 6 meters. And this sits right in the middle, so it should be quite interesting to see what results they get. At the moment, say it's only experimental in the US. In Ireland, they've had the license a couple of years, I think, now. And the other countries are just coming on board as well. So it's good. It's a new band that some countries have. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, certainly on that one. Bill, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I agree. This is kind of exciting. There's whisper beacons on 40.662 megahertz, with the center being at 1.5 kilohertz or 1500 hertz for those that are looking in their waterfall displays. But yeah, exactly what Ed was saying. This is very fascinating that we're doing this test, and it will be interesting to see, does 40 megahertz get more properties from 6 meters, or does it get more properties from 10 meters? I would assume, and this is just a guess, that it would be closer to the 6 meters kind of stuff. And we know the 6 meters, the magic band. I really want to learn more how they got the experimental license, because that's the other part I'm curious about. I wonder if some other folks could apply for this as well to get some testing on the 40 megahertz band, and maybe someday we can get testing on the 4 meter band down on 70 megahertz, which you guys over in the Brit gets to enjoy that we don't get.
Yeah, well, I can confirm 4 meters is often very fun. But there you go. Frank, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm delighted to see this. I think we can all celebrate experimentation and this sort of thing. Knowing Atlanta, Georgia very well, where he's located, I immediately looked at QRZ. He uses a mail stop for his FCC communications, which is located next to the Mexican consulate in Atlanta. So he actually lives somewhere else, but just gets his mail there. And I actually recognize the address that he apparently lives in. Now, why is that relevant? Well, as Bill kind of led in with, he's living in a major metropolitan area with all the attendant RFI and noises therein. So for what we observe about his transmissions and propagation stuff, I think it's going to tell us a lot about the capability for that band for an urbanized area. So that was one thing that I kind of lit up on. Gosh, I guess you have to ask, to get an experimental call sign. I'm not sure what the mechanism is, but just like the bands below our AM commercial broadcast band, we got on the air through experimental licenses, and then it became routinized. Only downside to this is, as we've covered in other stories, I'm wondering if this is going to be a handoff frequency allocation, because we're going to lose something in the future. And I hate to be the Debbie Downer or Donnie Downer, if you want to genderize that. But I'm always thinking about those allocations in trade, because that kind of happens on some things. But this is going to be a really different band width or band location for hams. I think Bill's got a great thought. It's really on the cusp. I routinely use a whisper beacon to see if 10 meters is open. And then when 10 meters is open, I look at 6 in the whisper network just to kind of see what's going on there. So it's going to be a lot of fun and games, Martin.
Yeah, certainly think so, Frank. And it's interesting when we get a new band. Some of us haven't got it, others have. And as it moves forward, it'll be an interesting time to see how useful it will be to us. Martin, you got any thoughts on this one?
You leave Donnie out of this, Frank. I thought he was gone. Anyway, hold my beer. So I have to ask. I mean, and the trouble with like new bands, of course, is no manufacturers make kits for it. So if you're experimenting, people have got to build kit for it. Okay, you might be able to receive stuff. I did see someone the other day asking about how to receive this and how we can reply. I think it's great having these bands. It's great playing with them. But it obviously, with the limitations of the kit, of what's available, it limits who can hear what. But I have to ask about the legality more than anything. Okay, in America, they're allowed to broadcast, they're allowed to transmit, they're doing this legally. In the UK, we are only allowed to, unless we are licensed for it, like with PMR, we can only listen to broadcast CB and amateur. Listening to 40 megahertz in the UK, and I've looked up on Ofcom's radio, I figure out they call it the frequency allocation table, 40 megahertz, where this is classed as fixed mobile. It doesn't say who it's licensed to or anything like that, but it's classed as fixed mobile. If we wanted to listen to that, I know you can listen to it, like if you've got an SDR or your HF radio goes up that high, fine. But are we allowed to do that? I don't know.
I think if we're listening to amateur frequencies and we're listening to an amateur transmission, then you could say that that's okay. I think it's where you're listening to a service, or you may gain profitability for listening to a broadcast that you shouldn't be listening to, is what they're really trying to stop, Martin.
Okay.
Yeah, in my opinion. Chris, any last words on this one?
A couple of things. Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see propagation. So it's kind of close to 10 meters, isn't it, I suppose? And I think as Bill was saying, kind of 6. It seems he sits in between 6 and 10 meters. So interesting to see what propagation characteristics it has. And on that legality thing, I think that's probably a great area, isn't it? It's an amateur band, but not in our country. So we're allowed to listen to it. Don't know. I think that's one that we'd have to. Well, I don't know. If you ask the question, if you ask the regulator, they probably wouldn't know either. So it's best just not to ask and just what is it? Apologise afterwards. Don't ask permission, sort of thing. So I think it's arguable in court. Put it that way.
Well, the station that has received this beacon at this side of the pond is G7PUV. So hopefully it is.
That's it, Ed. Grass him up.
It's on the links in our show notes. But no, listening, as long as you don't make commercial advantage out of it or anything illegal out of it, I don't see there should be any issues.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Ed. Yeah. There are lots of things that you're not supposed to listen to in the UK. Aircraft ban being the major one. And if you go and stand at the end of a runway at any major airport in the UK, you'll see people there with their scanners and one thing and another, and the police just drive straight by. It's not a major crime, but it is illegal. But
I suspect it's one of those things where if you were being a right old pain, it's something they could use to get, if it might be,
yeah.
If you're being annoying, had a bit of an issue with your attitude, then it might be something they could technically use to get you on, I think, rather than actually deliberately go out and trying to, deliberately get you for that particular offence, I suppose.
Yeah, it's one of those that is probably too much paperwork to deal with, but you have to, as good abiding law-abiding citizens, we have to abide by those laws. So there you go. Moving to our last news story. Frank, you put this one in. You sent a request to CQ magazine for some information. They haven't got back to you, but you're a little bit concerned, aren't you, Frank?
I am. As many of our listeners probably are very well aware of CQ magazine. It's been around for, more than 50 years or so. Long-time publication in amateur radio and related. A couple of years ago, maybe 3 years to 4 years ago, we covered a story where they failed to print an issue or two, and because of financial problems, they just literally didn't have the money to pay the printer. And it cost them. MFJ Enterprises stopped advertising there because they couldn't refund their money that they had paid for that. That's just a business thing. It always hurts when you lose advertising. So that puts you in position of having to recoup that. And they have, and they have continued to publish good work. I subscribe to it digitally and enjoy reading it. When I saw this posting that they put on their news section of their webpage, they talked about, and I'll quote here, the general business slowdown due to the pandemic over these past many months has ultimately resulted in an income pinch, delaying the printing of these issues. They just don't have the ability to pay for that printing. So they're going to extend current subscriptions and do 2 monthly issues, June and July's digital only. So they plan to be back in the print business for August. I reached out to Rich Moseson, the editor, for if he wanted to give any additional comment, and even offered him up to 5 minute audio interview, just so we could help our listeners understand what their situation is. So I think that ham radio is better off with CQ in business, no matter whether you subscribe or not. I think for the U.S., it's good to have another voice to the American Radio Relay League's QST and other magazines. I suspect Martin and other guys on across the pond there can tell me it's probably good to have Practical Wireless and Radio User in the mix to balance out Radcom from RSGB. I don't know that. I subscribe to all of those magazines too. So sorry to hear this, but it looks like they could be in some financial trouble right now. And we invited them to give us a sense of the certainty of being back in business in August, but no response.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Frank. And I'll come on to what I was going to say shortly. Bill, what's your thoughts on this one?
Very, very similar to Frank's. It's unfortunate that this is going on, but I see the logic of, doing a digital only, getting back on your feet after, because that's the other thing that I think that's not really clear is we don't know when their subscriptions come in, because they may have bursty times of the year when subscription renewals happen. But every time that this kind of situation happens, they usually lose readers, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, certainly is, Bill. Now, Chris, you get this magazine, I believe, electronically, and you take in most of your magazines electronically. Is there still a market for the printed magazine?
That's a big question. I mean, I actually get as it turns out, I have an app. My council here in the UK, they provide like an online library now, so you can actually get books and magazines on an app on your phone or on in my case, I've got it on an iPad tablet, and I actually get this magazine actually on that, and essentially I get it for free. So I don't quite know how. I presume the library must pay a subscription on my behalf, or I don't know what the deal is, but so there must be some financial benefit they get from that. But yes, I think generally we are seeing less and less print. I mean, I have a house full of magazines. I get Radcom, Practical Wireless, Radio User, and others, and they build up. And actually, there's an awful lot of paper. There's an awful lot of, I've got subscriptions. These things come through the post. There's an awful lot of, fuel used to deliver these things to my house. And actually, I've now started moving more and more things now to my tablet. And actually, it's so much easier because I can search for things. I can carry them around with me without having to, carry lots of issues around me. And I think that's the way the world is going. I think we're moving away from paper-based magazines. And I was saying before we started recording the show, as an amateur radio club, we used to produce a newsletter that was sent out on paper through the post. And then we decided to start producing that as a PDF, and it was emailed out, and some people perhaps didn't have a computer, were still getting it by the post. And the M said, look, it's costing so much money to print this thing out and then post it. Look, you've got a choice. You can either get it via email or not at all in the end, because it was just costing, so few people actually had that, it just became to the tipping point came where it wasn't worth doing the printing out anymore, and the cost of the ink and the cost of the postage and the envelopes and all that business. So I'm afraid it went down to being purely an email. So since then we've actually stopped doing the newsletter anyway. We've now do everything through social media, and that may be the way things are going in the future. I think print media, if you look at just generally in publishing, you've got newspapers and magazines. An awful lot is now going digitally. I think less and less people are getting, going to the news agents and picking up a magazine or a newspaper. I think they're getting more and more of their news through the internet, either through websites or through subscriptions, digitally. So I think that's the way things are going, in a similar way to things becoming more virtual. So, our radio club is now, we do our meetings via Zoom now. I think what's driven a lot of that has been the pandemic, but whether we ever go back to actually having meetings face to face, it makes life a lot easier for me as the club secretary to get speakers from further afield. If all they've got to do is turn up at their computer and not have to drive from, to a location to do a talk, and likewise for members to turn up and actually attend a meeting, we get so many more people attending meetings because they don't have to actually get in the car and drive somewhere. So I've gone slightly off topic there, but I think that we're definitely seeing much more digitisation of these things, as time goes on.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Chris. Ed, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I used to actually subscribe to CQ magazine, and I found I never read it. And I have a similar problem with the ARRL digital magazines, which I get as well as a member. I have to actually force myself to find time to sit down and go and read it. Whereas when a paper magazine comes through the post, I find the time, I sit down and I read it from cover to cover. And maybe I'm old-fashioned. It's certainly not a fear of IT. I've worked in IT over 40 years. So I don't know what it is, but it's probably the same story as QSL cards. A paper QSL card is much nicer than an eQSL, and an actual physical magazine I find a lot nicer than a digital one. Maybe it's the way the digital ones are presented. We talked about this beforehand. A PDF file is not that inviting, whereas a proper digital magazine with links and everything else is better. But I still find it difficult to make myself, and I have to make myself go and read it. Maybe print on demand is something that maybe something in between the two situations. So the person who chooses that he wants something printed on paper can order print on demand through another organisation, whether it be the local photocopying company in Germany or whatever, or Office Works kinds of people, or something else, and pay extra for that. Whereas then the club or the organisation producing the magazine hasn't got the expense of printing and postage. I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot more print magazines disappear over the next 5 years. I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot more print-on-demand capabilities for those who want a printed copy and are prepared to pay for it. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, interesting. I've got one more thing to say, but I'm going to invite Martin in first. Martin, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I have to think. I'm sure QST was printed in the UK. When I was a member of the ARRL, they used to get distributed in the UK, and I'm pretty sure that was printed, or the local copies were printed here. I do get a magazine, that interestingly, that comes with a subscription that I have to another body. But I'll be honest with you, despite the fact it's a paper magazine that comes through my door, I don't read it, mainly because it's got a lot of stuff in it that's incredibly biased in favour of its advertisers. But, I digress. The general business slowdown is due to the pandemic over the many months that has ultimately related to an income pinch, delaying the printing of these issues. Sorry, but I really, really wish people would stop hiding behind the pandemic if you've got an issue. We've had the pandemic's been around for a year and a half. We are bored with that. We are bored with that excuse. Everyone is using it. Please stop it. Financial issues or not, sending an email to your subscribers to let them know what is going on is free. It doesn't cost you. Well, it might take a couple of minutes of your time, but that's it. Okay, maybe you don't want to scare subscribers off, but you're going to do that if people don't get what they're paying for. I don't know what the solution is, but as you mentioned, is the future of printed media going away? I think probably yes. Chris is mentioning getting stuff digitally. Pretty much everything that I consume is digital now. A lot of the stuff that I consume comes from YouTube. It comes from independent podcasters. It comes from even businesses and broadcasters, networks, if you will, that put the content out that I'm interested in. When was the last time I voluntarily picked up a magazine to read it? I can't remember. I definitely picked up a magazine that we were in a while back, and I read through that because we were in it, and I thought, oh, there's the story with us, and what else have we got in here? Let's have a flick through. But yeah, I can't remember the last time other than that I've voluntarily gone out and bought a magazine. Actually, yes, I can. 1995, Amiga format.
That shows your age, Martin.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. But interestingly, I agree with you. Hiding behind the COVID issue, I think, and this is not a dig at CQ magazine. This is a general statement. There are a lot of companies that have gone by the wayside due to COVID. The reason they've gone by the wayside due to COVID is they were probably teetering on the edge and probably weren't viable all this time. And all COVID has done is accelerated their demise. They were about to go to the wall, let's be honest. On the exception to that, and Bill mentioned this before we started, how does QRP Club produce 3 A5 booklets every year? 4 booklets every year in colour now for £6 a year membership. You know, come on, that's quite something. I'm guessing it's because, yes, they do have a few adverts in the back, but I'm guessing that most people probably write for the magazine for free because it's their club magazine, effectively. So, but that's the exception rather than the rule. Do you agree, Bill?
Yeah, I agree. That's one thing I was going to say about Martin is like, yeah, I normally, consume articles and magazines digitally now. However, I do enjoy Sprat showing up every quarter, and it's mind-blowing. And I do want to say, just in general, this was a chat Dan and I had, I think it was over Twitter a year or two ago, something about they don't pay the authors that much per word for magazine articles anymore anyway. So I'm still perplexed by it. I mean, it's beautiful. It's well laid out. Content is amazing. There's very few ads, which, I won't name and shame other magazines, but they're, exactly what Martin was referring. Some magazines show up every month and they're ads from cover to cover with a little bit of content down, the one side of every 4th page or something crazy like that. But yeah, I still don't know how Sprat does it. They must have like a sweetheart deal with a printer is all I can figure. But I mean, they ship them to me across the pond. Even that costs a lot. I don't get it.
Maybe the printer's a member of the club.
That would make perfect sense, actually.
So very quickly, GQRP Club. Yeah, I'm a member of the GQRP Club. I think the magazine's fantastic. And yeah, they're not paying me to say this. I think it's well worth every penny I pay. Okay, well, that concludes the news stories. Let's find out what the guys have been up to as I roll across the page here on my worksheet. Chris, what have you been up to?
Not an awful lot of actual radio activity. It was quite nice we've had a couple of sessions now with the Radio Club. So outside, we've had a couple of sessions up at Epsom Downs, which is, for those that don't know, is quite a big wide open space in South London. It actually overlooks London. We've had a couple of evenings up there on a Tuesday night with the Radio Club and got to see some folks I've not seen since lockdown. So kind of 18 months. So that was quite nice to actually to do that. Other than that, haven't really done an awful lot of radio, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and unfortunately I missed both of those because I was on late shift. But never mind. Martin, what have you been up to?
Probably a little bit more than Chris, but still not very much. I've been getting really into sending pictures on D-Star. Really, really into that. Since I got my radio program up properly, got the hotspot working properly. I think it's 72D, I think. And some of the pictures that come through there are quite fun. So I've been doing that. Obviously been playing with the ICQ talk group, learning more about that as you and I did and a few of us did the other week, about sort of the back end of how that worked. But chatting with that and chatting to people on there, which is a bit of fun, both, in fact, via all technology, so via D-Star Fusion and DMR, so that's a bit of fun. And I've got to have a bit of a rethink. My antenna on my car is on the roof rack. I've got a really, really thin piece of coax that comes from the bottom of that in through the door seal and round to a thicker piece of coax inside the car. Unfortunately, it seems to act as a little path for the water to get in. So with the heavy rains that we've had at the moment, and believe you me, we've had torrential rain, the drains of everything have been backing up because of the rain. My car has been filling up with water as well. It's just running down this cable. So I've got to have a bit of a rethink about how to get that in without it forming a path of water into the car. And also doing some paperwork to get up on the roof to go and have a look at XP in the next week or so. It seems we've had a lightning strike nearby that seems to have upset something. So we've got to go and give it a bit of a kick, work out what's gone on and put it right. But paperwork for that is done. Just need to wait for the boss to confirm when I can have the time off to go up there. So, yeah, that's what's been going on with me.
Yeah, sounds good, Martin. Well, I'm on lates next week, so if you want to make it at a 9 o'clock start, we can do it in a couple of hours, I'm sure.
Yep. I will touch base with you off the air.
Yeah, give me a shout. Right. Ed, what have you been up to?
Well, I want to start with an apology to the listeners. In the piece that we did on the POC, the Portable Operations Challenge, a couple of weeks back, I said that there was 3 logging programs. I was actually incorrect. The N3FJP logging program unfortunately doesn't cover the Portable Operations Challenge. Only VKCL and N1MM Plus cover it. What have I been doing? Well, as well as SOTA, I'm now involved in HEMA, HEMA, and I've got a couple of activations in for both of the systems in the last few weeks. And I'm actually surprised how well my small kit, which is just a loaded whip, a HF Pro 2, and the Zygo G90 work together. They work well together, and the combination is quite small. It all packs in one rucksack, so it makes getting up to some of these summits a lot easier. I'm sure it doesn't get out as well as having a proper dipole at 5 or 6 meters above ground, but the simplicity and lightweight nature of a simple setup that works has definitely paid for itself. Coming back to the FMH Portable Operations Challenge, I'm actually starting to gather together equipment and planning for September 4th and 5th, which I know clashes with the SSB Field Day in the UK and IARU Region 1, but I'm going to be out there for at least 2 of the 3 sessions. And also, the last thing I've been very busy with is I've had to change my smartphone, because since the beginning of July, there's been no 3G service in Germany. It's all been closed down. And so I've had to upgrade to a smartphone that does 4G. And that's all working now. But as you know, it always takes some time to get all the apps over and get them all set up the way you want it. And it's amazing how much time that takes, even with the programs that are supposed to do it for you. So not that much radio work apart from the portable activations. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah, sounds like you've been really busy. Now, I'm going to go to Bill next, because I know Bill has a hard stop, and if you have to disappear for the end, Bill, I understand. But what have you been up to?
Like Ed, like everybody else, I've been sort of busy. I worked the annual 13 Colony Special Event Station. I got a clean sweep, meaning I worked all the special event stations, CW only, QRP only. I even got the TM13 COL station in France on 20 meters, which was really cool. He had quite a pileup. The only one I missed of the bonus stations was GB13 COL again. They just have too much noise where they're at, so they just really can't hear the super weak signals there. I also worked stations during the Parks on the Air Summer Plaque event, which we had a feature on last month. That was last weekend? Yeah, last weekend. Just picked up a bunch of stations. They were working in there. That was kind of fun. I also worked the John Glenn 100th birthday special event station, which is KY8C. That's cool because John Glenn's just was a cool astronaut. I also did my normal soda chasing sprinkled in as well. I also downloaded an RC of the new version of WSJTX. Nothing new to report on that front other than the RC's working. And when we got a couple stations, gave them some contacts when they were up on the hilltop. That's all.
Well, it certainly sounds like you've been busy, Bill. Certainly sounds like you've been really busy. So you're putting us a little bit to shame. Let's see what Frank's been up to.
Oh, been sort of busy like the other fellows here. Finished up the generational changes in ARL sweepstakes contesting with Scott Wright K0MD. It'll be in the August and September issue of the National Contesting Journal. Somewhat surprising, an additional paper I wrote on the Portable Operations Challenge, titled The Portable Operations Challenge, an Experiment in Handicap Scoring, will also be in the August and September issues. So, getting a little writing done. Got a couple of other things that I'm working on. For listeners who are interested in the demographics of contesting, Scott and I are ready to give club talks by Zoom on this, what we call the demographic storm brewing for American contest participants. You can just write either one of us at our respective email addresses. We're both good on QRZ. On the building end, I completed a 43-foot vertical antenna that I put together using a fiberglass telescoping pole. I ran across a patio umbrella base, is what it's marketed for, at a Home Depot big box store here. It's a flat sheet of steel, about 1/8 of an inch thick, with a short steel post that you'd mount your umbrella in on it. Really good price. Picked that up, drilled it to put 16 roll-up radials on it, got those installed with stainless steel nuts and bolts, and also have an MFJ 994 remote antenna tuner at the base. So we'll put that to use, I hope, in the upcoming Portable Operations Challenge with my team. For that, also, like a lot of groups that operate together, field day and what have you, is you get interference from one transceiver to another. So I'm completing the build out of an automatic bandpass filter for 160 through 6 meters. Now, I didn't construct the filter itself. It's from a board I bought from a company in Australia called VK Amps. I'm very impressed with them. Small company. Quality of their stuff at the price is very good. I'm putting it into a case. I'll have a dual fan system that'll bring air in and then take hot air out over the toroids to keep them cool. It'll have a manual band switch, and it also features an automatic A to D band decoder port. I won't use that in the short run, but I will build that out. It'll run about 200 watts PEP. But if you're running digital, down around 100 is probably good. So a couple of pieces of equipment Martin have been working on. I'm still tracking down the lost tribe of U.S. radio amateurs, the first ones who actually made amateur before Hiram Percy Maxim kind of organized it through the ARL, doing some historical work in our public census data and genealogy records. And that's been just a hoot looking up the biographies of these original hams. I'll have more to say about that. That will probably appear at some point in the Spectrum Monitor magazine. And finally, I gave a talk to the Sutton and Cheam Club in South London on the price, performance, and satisfaction research. I had a delightful time. I didn't actually see anybody fall asleep, so I hope the club did as well. So that's about it, Mark.
That was a great talk. Thank you. I should mention that on my section there, Frank. But no, thank you for doing that. It was really good.
Frank, I was on an earliest that day. I was up at 4 a.m. to go to work, but I did manage to stay awake. Honest, I did, Frank. So,
well, I declare victory on that. As tired as you were, if you didn't fall asleep, then hey, I declare victory on that part of it.
Yeah, it was a good talk. And kept me well interested. Well, when I started to write my notes about what I'd been up to about 2 hours ago, I thought, well, I haven't written much. And as the evening's gone on, more and more has fallen into my brain of what I've been up to. And hopefully it won't bore you too much. Guys, I've had an RFI problem in my shack. I use a Kenwood TS590S, not an SG, an S, with a SDR unit as a PAN adapter, and the MFJ antenna switch that allows you to run an SDR at the same time and switches the SDR out when you're going to transmit. I can't remember the model number, but they're certainly available. And so if you write to me, I'll tell you what it is. And every time I transmitted, either the SDR play would, the USB port would lock up, or the computer would reboot. And the normal wisdom is you go around, you put ferrites everywhere. So I had clamp-on ferrites, both ends of the cable, shielded cable, all the works, changed this, that, and the other. Didn't solve it. Ended up rewiring the shack and moving everything away from the RF side and running cables one way and RF the other way. Still didn't solve it. And I was just about to give up when I took out all the bits and pieces, took out the antenna switch, took out the SDR play, and I was feeling pretty miserable. And then the penny dropped. The one thing I didn't think of, the most obvious, the computer itself. And the computer itself wasn't a cheap one. It was an HP computer. But if you put any more than about 5 watts on HF bands anywhere near it, it either locks one of the USB ports up or it reboots. So swapping the computer for another slightly older one I had kicking around, I now have a working pen adapter on my Kenwood. The MFJ antennaized switch works brilliantly, and I'm now a happy boy and have some HF capabilities at home. And I was and I know it sounds silly, and most of you think, "Oh, that is obvious," but the obvious wisdom normally is that the cables are picking up the RF, not getting straight into the computer. To work on that, well, I've now got to reinstall some of the software I had, and I've spent some time reinstalling the software on the computer. And it's quite obvious you forget all the things you've done to get something to work in the first place. Because once you've got it working, you just move on to the next thing. So we had another learning curve on that one. However, like Bill, I didn't go for the release candidate, but I did download WSJTX, and I've had about 20 contacts on FT8 with my Kenwood 590S. Now, it still doesn't excite me, but I've actually got it working, which is another tick in my box. Still can't get it to work with my 703. I know what the problem is. I've just got to suss how to get it to work. I've been active on VHF and UHF quite a bit, including the ICQ podcast talk group, but not as much as normal due to work issues. Work suddenly got very, very busy, and more people now are travelling off peak and wanting assistance, so I'm busy at work. However, 4:00 was 4:30 this morning. Just for a giggle, I was up a fraction earlier than I normally am, and at 4:30 this morning I thought, I don't know, let's put a call through the ICQ talk group. And within a few seconds putting the call through, I had a gentleman come back to me from Arizona who'd met me in Dayton, Keith, a nice gentleman. We had a 20-minute chat this morning at 4:30, before 4:30 till 10 to 5. So, you know, the talk group, there are people out there. It's got a bit quieter than the beginning, but if you put a call through, you may very well get somebody come back to you. Just blip it, and they may not hear you, or they may not spot you actually have blipped it on their radio, and you'll sit there wondering why there's nobody there. So, all in all, great fun. Must admit, though, I have used 4 meters a few times. I know Bill's a 4 meter fan, or would like to be. I've used 4 meters a fair bit recently in London, and it's always quite active. So that's what I've been up to. Sorted out my RF problems, did a bit of FT8, and now got my HF working. So that can't be bad, I think. So there you go. Right. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining me tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Chris. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
Been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having you. And Mr. Ed Durrant, DD5LP. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, as always, lots of fun.
Yeah, I'm enjoyed tonight as well as yourself. And last but not least, I'm going to say thanks to Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH, for joining us from the other side of the pond.
Thank you, Martin. And listen, I was kind of shocked that I had been on the podcast once before, as early as 2013. So it's been a long but very enjoyable relationship. Thank you very much.
It's great. And I enjoy talking to all of the presenters, and we are like a big family, which is quite nice. I gazump you a little bit, Frank, because I've been on the podcast since July 2008.
Oh, yeah.
And I say I only ever signed up for 10. Was it 356? We're still going strong. And I'd like to thank Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B, who's had to leave because he had a hard stop. But all in all, another nice one in the bag. So I say 73s, guys, and we'll catch up with the next part of the podcast. 73.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief with me, Colin M6BOY. We start with news here with a group that are listeners to the show and reached out to us. They're the RadioMentor.net group. And what it is they've created a free online examination study tool. Originally, the group said it's up to help students in North America, but have now expanded out through partnerships to various other countries as well. This is a free tool which brings resources together in things like mock exams and online workshops to try and help people pass their tickets on the first attempt. They're also on the lookout for mentors, tutors and trainers as well to help them with the project. So if this is something you'd like to find out more about, best thing to do is to go across to radiomentor.net and check out what the guys are doing and see if it's something that might be interesting for you to get involved in. In the States, we have an experimental station, Whiskey Lima 2 X-Ray Uniform Papa, is transmitting Whisper on 40.662 MHz in the 8 meter band. Now, it's part of an experimental station operated by Lynn Holcomb, November India 4 Yankee in Georgia, and it's licensed to operate with 400 watts of effective radiated power, between that area now of 40.660 to 40.700 megahertz. So this is all based upon a 2019 petition RM11843, which asked the FCC to create an 8 meter amateur radio allocation on a secondary basis. So it's being used from there. So if you're in the area, check it out. And we'll put a link to more information on the usual ICQpodcast.com website. We finish off with news from South America. We're in Brazil. Amateurs in Brazil are discussing with their regulator in relation to online exams. So basically they're having conversations with Labry and to carry out internal consultations and to create this possible registry to allow people to take part in online exams throughout Brazil. So again, another great news story here of removing the barriers for people getting involved in our hobby. And as I say, we'll watch this one of interest to see if the guys are successful in Brazil, to see if they can get online examinations in Brazil. Right, well, now we're going to head over to our features episode. We're going to be chatting with Eric from the QSO Today show in relation to the Summer Expo, which takes place in a fortnight's time, and the things he's doing to, bring to us what is probably left to be one of the very few expos that are around these online expos. So I hope you enjoy Martin's my chat with Eric. And as I say, hopefully you'll be tipping up to a show in a fortnight's time.
And now, what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Well, everybody, here we are on this episode's feature of the ICQ podcast. Martin and I are joined by Eric, 4 Zulu, 1 Uniform Golf. And you'll know Eric, of course, from the QSO Today show. But coming up in a fortnight's time from this episode is the summer edition of the QSO Expo. So welcome to the ICQ podcast, Eric. Great to have you back with us. And plans, I'm sure, are fully underway and getting very close to wrapping up everything for the launch of the summer show, the QSO Expo.
Yeah, well, we're actually at the busiest part of preparing for the expo, but yes, the next QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo will actually start at 0100 hours August 14th, and it will run 48 consecutive hours until it ends about 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, PDT. on the 15th, Sunday the 15th. So we kind of gear the expo so that it looks like it's in California. And we do that mostly because 90% of the people that come to the expo are coming from North America. So that's kind of why we do it this way. Even though I'm in Israel, the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo is primarily targeted at North American hams. And because that's where I hail from, and that's where most of the presenters are coming from.
Now, talking about presentations, I know you got another stacked list of presenters ready to present this time, and I mean, certainly we have a very diverse group back in March. But is there any of interest in particular that you think are standout presenters that people might be interested in for registering to see?
Oh, you know what? It's kind of like all of there's over 90 presentations that will be presented on the weekend. Most likely, I'll do this in 8 simultaneous tracks on both days in order to get all of those presentations in. But they're like children, so it's kind of like you don't want to show favoritism towards your children. But John Portune, W6NBC, is back for a third time, and what I love about John's presentations is that we're seeing the evolution of ideas from John, and so everything follows on what he's done before. Peter Parker from Australia, who is a distinguished author of QRP and other kinds of books for radio, is also speaking. He has 2 sessions, so there's just a lot of stuff, and I urge people to go to the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo website and actually look at the presentations. It's a searchable, indexable list. You can download it to a spreadsheet if you want to look at it that way. And it's really it'll be an amazing group this time. It's been an amazing group the last 2 times, but we have over 90. It seems like we're just people that can't say no.
Yeah, I think I was just flicking through the whole list of the talks there. I think the great thing as well is the diversity of the presenters as well. You know, a great range of ages, and obviously both male, female, etc. presenters as well. So there's a great diversity of presenters as well, coming with lots of different ideas and the areas they're passionate in and the hobby. So, I mean, it is a really great lineup you pulled together there, Eric.
Well, you know what ends up happening is we send out a call for speakers, and so what we put up is what we get. So if there's no, for example, there's nothing about DMR this time. I'm sorry to say, but that's because there was nobody that actually applied that wanted to do a DMR talk. So we're kind of subject to what we get on the one hand, but what we get is really amazing. In the QSO Today podcast, I've often said that amateur radio now is like this big circus. It has the big tent with the 3 rings in the middle, and the 3 rings could be DXing, contesting, and rag chewing, for example. But it has a midway that has 1,000 tents, and what you see with the presentations that we have in our auditorium for the upcoming expo is you see this midway. And all of the various interesting things that are happening in ham radio, or that are happening by ham radio operators as part of the hobby, that make this hobby so interesting and amazing. And I'm hoping that what we end up doing is we inspire hams that are thinking about doing something different, that they'll actually see that thing that causes them to take action.
Yeah, definitely. Now, unfortunately, we can't make it on this this episode, which is of great, great disappointment to us. But I know one of the things I really enjoyed last time, because we spent so much time chatting away to people in the lobbies, etc., was the ability to be able to log on afterwards and watch the videos afterwards. Please tell me that's a feature you're keeping for this episode, because with 90-something speakers, there's no way you're going to get random over a weekend. Is that going to be available still?
Oh, absolutely. No, we have 2 levels of tickets. So we have a free pass that gets you to the exhibit hall and makes you eligible for the prizes that are offered by exhibitors. So the expo itself does not have prizes. We have a prize page where we're posting what the exhibitors are putting up for prizes, but So that free ticket gives you access to the exhibitors, to the exhibitor. Each of the exhibit booths has a video chat room that will hold up to 100 people, and then the $10 ticket, which changes on the 8th to $12.50. So the early bird ticket is available now. That $10 ticket gives you access to the entire platform. We'll have some video lounges that are based on subject matter. And it gives you access to the 30-day on-demand period, which means all of those videos we will splice on the live Q&A that we do at the end. We'll splice that onto the videos so that when you download them during that 30-day on-demand period, you'll also see the full presentation and the Q&A that followed it.
Okay. Now, you just said something there that was interesting, which I hadn't even spotted myself. So you said the magical word for a lot of hams, and their ears will prick up there. You say there's a free ticket, and that gets you to an opportunity to come along and see the booths, maybe talk to your favorite vendor, and enter their prize draws. Is that correct? So I just heard.
That's exactly right. So there is a free ticket. We hope that people will actually go to the full ticket. Let's be blunt here. We spend tens of thousands of dollars to make this expo and put it on these platforms. I'm using 8 10,000 people Zoom webinar rooms. So if you go and price those, you'll actually see that for the weekend, that's $8,000 worth of Zoom webinar rooms just to be able to do that Q&A portion that follows each of those. So we hope people will buy the $10 ticket. But if they can't buy the $10 ticket and they just want to come and they want to meet the exhibitors, then they can do that for free.
Yeah. I suppose the next thing then is if someone gets a free ticket to come along, they see the booth and realize the exciting stuff going on, can they upgrade that ticket to a pay ticket?
Absolutely. There's up in the upper right-hand corner, there'll be a little icon where they can actually go into their account and they can upgrade their ticket on the platform that we're using so that there's no problems. Like we had some problems in March as people continually remind me in emails to me that we've decided to put everything on VFairs, including the ticketing. So the ticketing is integrated into the VFairs platform, and you can upgrade just by pushing a button on the platform, and you can upgrade all the way up until I think 5 o'clock on Sunday, Pacific time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Eric, you mentioned, sorry, it's Martin here. You mentioned, you had problems, and we know you did. But I said to you before we started, you can't make an omelette without cracking an eggs, and you corrected me even further on that. So I'll let you say it if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you're Jewish and you keep kosher, that when you're cracking eggs, you're separating eggs to make sure that there's no blood in the eggs, because we don't eat the blood. So in every omelet, you might have to throw an egg away. So it depends, I guess, where you get the eggs from and how they were graded. But so even with the expo, I'm trying new things all the time, and I tried something in March, and that was to merge 2 great platforms. So I'm the AirMeet platform is a great platform, and I still own it. We still pay for it, and we're going to continue to use it, probably in monthly events. But I tried to merge 2 great platforms using a programmer and iframes and all the stuff that I don't quite understand, and it failed miserably. On the one hand, on the other hand, if I'd been more together, mentally that weekend, I probably would have said, "Well, just use your email address on any of the platforms, and they'll just let you in." I didn't have that presence of mind to let people know that. On the one hand, on the other hand, a lot of people figured that out. In fact, I think over 6,000 of the 7,500 people who were ticketed actually ended up on the platform. So we still had a pretty good turnout on the live weekend. And then, as I was saying, Martin, before we started, we had 2 people on our staff that had COVID that were actually really sick. Emanuela was sick, and my programmer in Algeria was so sick that he was intubated on Sunday morning of the expo for 16 hours before he was released. And still, he was able to come back 2 days later, and we built a player, a Vimeo player that would allow us to, for blind people to be able to navigate the list and to be able to play all the presentations. And from that player, we had almost 100,000 downloads of presentations or presentations watched in that 30-day on-demand period. So things happen. I'm always experimenting. I always want to make it better. But sometimes when you make an omelet, you have to throw out an egg.
Yeah. But the other thing is, and I'm being brutally honest about this, we attended last show, and we've apologised that we can't attend this time. And there was a lot going on in our lives, and if we can't do it properly, then we won't come along and do it half cocked. But what I would say is, all the presentations you put up, that's got to be able to look at any of those presentations over a period of 30 days. If you only look at 10 of them, it's got to be worth the money you were charging. Whether you did anything else, the sheer fact that there was so much good content there, and even if they didn't turn up, we just looked at the videos. But I mean, I know that we had great fun chatting to various people ourselves, and we tipped up in some of the other booths and had chats with other people there. It was a good weekend. Don't put yourself down on it. I think we enjoyed it, be honest with you. There were problems, but if you don't try, we'd still be playing CW with spark gap transmitters, wouldn't we? So I think it went very well.
Well, all that content, the content from last August and March is on the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo website. So you can, even now without the ticket, you can go and you can search the list. You can play any of the previous presentations. And when the programmer I'm using is not engaged in other activity that I have him on right now, then I'll probably create an audio, a way to download just the audio from those presentations for people that want to just hear it rather than see it and hear it. So we're always trying to make it better. We're always trying to make that content accessible, because I think that that's where it's at. If you want to explore that midway in the circus that's amateur radio, then I think we have the content.
Yeah, the bit I enjoyed the most about it, and when you think we've lost Dayton, we've lost Friedrichshafen, we've lost UK Hamfest, we've lost the French one as well. This week it was announced. What I really enjoyed about coming to your show was the ability to be able to be on a table, have the videos there. They're late in the evening our time, and I got to be honest with you, there was a couple of bottles of Heineken consumed with friends and colleagues and whatever it be, and just chatting about the hobby and chatting about life and being together the same way we would have been at all those other events. And it gave a wonderful platform to meet your international friends where you would normally meet in one location, and giving that opportunity. So that was the one big takeaway I took from it, was that it did fill a gap that we're missing, by not having the standard events, etc. And I think that was one of the great successes of the last show is that opportunity to chat with friends and colleagues and even new people who they hadn't met before, and just talk about the hobby and talk about how we were and how the world was, etc. And enjoy that. And so it started off with coffee and then developed into beer by the end of the day. But it was extremely a great experience, and I really hope everybody going this time takes it. And as you mentioned, integrate into vSpheres. I work in the IT industry in Ireland, and our big security vendor here in Ireland uses the vSphere platform for doing this, and it works really, really well. And I think it's geared up for great success for you to have everything running through the vSpheres platform, because I really think that would be a great success for you from everything I've seen before on it. So it should be good. It should be good across the board.
Yeah.
Well, they're an amazing company, and if I might say so, and we love working with the vFairs team. They have a group in Dubai that's dedicated to us. So they're always on the spot. They always answer our questions. They fix anything that we have a problem with. So, yeah, we love working with them. And that, by the way, what you were referring to in the last expo was those air meet tables, those tables of 8, and we had 200 of those in the main lobby the last time. Now we don't have that platform this time, and so therefore we don't have the ability to make tables like that. Although at some point we're thinking about it. But in the next expo in 2 weeks, there'll be maybe 6, 8 different lounges, and those lounges are open 48 hours. So even though the presentations, will stop at 5, 6 o'clock Pacific time, the platform will still be open. So I hope that people will take advantage of the lounges and wander around the platform for that full weekend, and they can do that in the middle of the night. I was actually hoping that we could get Australians or Indians or something like that to use the platform on their local time, because that platform is available, and it doesn't cost any more to have more of those slots filled. And maybe that'll happen in the future. Maybe we'll be able to make some more headway so that we can share this platform, with hams on other continents.
Yeah, well, what I would say anybody that is outside of the North American time zone, there was people online. If you like UK in morning time, etc. Over that weekend, we were definitely there, and there were people floating around. Now, was it as busy? No, but could you catch somebody and have a great conversation? Certainly, yes. It is well worth turning up if you're like outside of what you think is going to be the busy time, because there are still people floating around, as you say.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to own up to something. I'm going to grass Colin and Mr. Martin Rothwell up. You see, I'm not allowed to have too much coffee because I get a little bit feisty. And the boys were plying me with coffee, and the first one started off with, I'm sitting talking on a table, my doorbell rings, and I said, hang on a minute, and I went downstairs from the shack to the front door, and there was a little man delivering coffee. And I said, no, I didn't order any coffee, go away. I didn't order it. And he's adamant he's got the right address, and I'm adamant he hasn't. And then he said, Mr. Colin ordered it. And I thought, oh, right. So I arrive upstairs with coffee. Now, the rule is, there's rules on the ICQ podcast of Martin's not allowed more than 2 cups of coffee a day.
But we were sending.
I think they got me to about 4, Eric.
Yeah, on the hour. This was international purchases on the hour being sent using Uber to deliver coffee to his house, and we were all taking it in turns on the team to buy a coffee and send it to him. Just to keep
funny.
Him going. So yeah,
they were hoping I was going to be naughty, Eric. They were hoping I was going to be very naughty.
Oh, I don't know. But there is a rule, anybody. If you do bump into Martin at an actual show, if you give him his 3rd cup of coffee, you take responsibility for him. So that's the rule, and it's your responsibility to check how many he's had, and you can't trust Martin when he tells you the number. So it is a game we play over who takes responsibility for him. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep that in mind when I run into you at the next live event that I get to. That you will also be there. I'm assuming that would probably be a Dayton or something like that.
There's a great hope for Dayton. As you say, I suppose it's down to international travel, isn't it? But there's a great hope for Dayton and Friedrichshafen next year. But we're just trying to finalise up next year's plans, and let's see if our governments mess them up again, shall we say? But
yeah. Well, I'm not also traveling from here because getting out of Israel is easy. Getting back is actually difficult. So.
Yeah. Exactly. So the only other thing, though, is prizes wise. So there's some great prizes. I see Flex Radio are putting up a transceiver amongst many of the prizes. So I suppose it's a great opportunity for people who are going to the shows, maybe to bag a good goodie as well, isn't it? So you've got a prize draw pays.
I should mention, Bruna and Pietro Bigali are making a limited number of QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo iambic keys. So I get number 1, but the other 19 will be available from Bigali, and they're custom keys that are branded, with the expo. And we thought it would be a fun idea to actually do something like this. So
Yeah.
pretty soon, within the next few days, I should have a picture of what number one looks like, and there'll be a limited number. I think a total of 20 of those keys available.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That'd be certainly interesting. I know our colleague Dan Romacek would be very, very interested in that there. So, yeah, he will definitely be interested from there.
We wanted to do something fun. Now, and of course, Flex Radio is the platinum sponsor, and they will have 8 rooms running, 8 video rooms running, and I think they'll have their whole full complement. So they may have up to 18 people from Flex on the platform in the booth during the weekend.
So again, so really, I mean, we're not just talking here about a great opportunity to listen to some great speakers, a great opportunity to review, as say the speakers afterwards, which is certainly what I'll be doing with the ticket that I've bought. I'll be reviewing the videos afterwards when I come back from vacation. But also a great opportunity to go and see your favorite vendors, catch up with your friends, etc. That you haven't been able to see for most of this year. My God, I mean, why am I going on vacation this weekend? That's the question I'm going to ask. Why am I going on vacation? So I think what we'll do, I think it's going to be a fantastic event, and everybody. So what we're going to suggest you do, QSO Today hamexpo.com is where you go to register either for a free ticket or a paid ticket to get the videos and the presentations. Join thousands of your fellow hams, and we generally do mean thousands of your fellow hams. And look, everyone have a great weekend and support everything that Eric and his team are doing, because certainly, we certainly need events like this, certainly this time, to make sure we keep together, improve our mental health, etc., and keep things ticking along. So, I mean, Eric, a tip of the hat to you for coming back again stronger and keeping the fantastic QSO Today Expo running. And I wish you the greatest success with this summer edition.
Thank you, Colin. I really appreciate the positive words. And Martin, thanks so much for allowing me to share the microphone here. Thank you. 73.
73.
Yeah, 73 is Eric.
Hey, are you going to do that ham radio thing this year?
What thing?
The one with the bulldozer tearing everything up.
Oh, the portable operations channel. Yes, I am.
Is it safe with all the big guns and everything?
Well, it was only little pistols last year, but the big guns have been challenged. They've done it again. The steering committee has continued to level the playing field. This year, there are 3 separate time periods for worldwide propagation and a new date. See foxmyhotel.com/challenge. Will you take the challenge?
Well, for everybody with a ticket that's planning to attend the QSO Expo show there in a couple of weeks' time, I really hope you enjoy the show, and I'm extremely jealous that you get that wonderful opportunity. As I say, as I'm on vacation that weekend, but I'll be certainly checking out the videos and presentations afterwards, as I say, to see everything that's been going on at that expo. As we mentioned in the feature there, QSO Today hamexpo.com is the place to go for your ticket, that you can get an early bird offer there for you. But I say, if you don't get an early bird offer, at least get the freebie one and get yourself into those prize draws. Well worthwhile doing from there. So I say it's a bit of an unfortunate one for us, Dad. We're both away that weekend. It's actually our birthday weekends, and I know we're both away on vacation that weekend. So it's a real shame we can't attend that show, because we had great fun last time, didn't we?
We certainly did. And it was very interesting. We have said to Eric that we're more than happy to hopefully join him next time. But unfortunately, this one we just couldn't do. I know we've got lots of plans. And your mum's arranged something for me. She's invited 2 people to come and see me, a Mr. Ben and a Mr. Jerry. And I'm quite happy with that one.
Is that in exchange for all those chocolate biscuits you give her for a cup of tea? Maybe you're doing well now.
One hopes so. No, I've got to be very careful. I don't eat biscuits and cakes and sweets and all those sort of things. But you have to have one thing that you do. And I'm afraid ice cream, I'm a bit of a sucker, but there you go. So let's know how the DMR group's been doing over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully it's still nicely active, and we've got more people joining the group. Well, Colin, yeah, the DMR group's doing quite well. Not as busy as it has been, because I think people have now gone back to work because in the UK, due to COVID's bit calming down a bit here. World-wise, there's always people on. But if you just blip it and don't put a call through, you may get missed. There are times when I look at my radio and go, oh, somebody was on a while ago. How long ago? And I've missed you. So you might not want to talk to me, but certainly other people are out there. Put a call through, please. It helps you get some contacts. And I will say that it is an international talk group. I mean, I was up early for work one day this week, put a call through at about 20 to 5 in the morning in the UK here, and worked a gentleman in Arizona, Kenneth. So there are people about. It is an international talk group. Can't guarantee you will always get somebody, but it is worth doing. And I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks to get mobile with the talk group as well. So that might also give me a bit more fun when I'm going to and from work, Colin.
No, that sounds like good news. That's good news. So keep us all updated in how that project's going. And as I say, guys, there's help pages, etc., on the ICQ podcast webpage. So check out about how to get involved. And you can even listen in, even if you don't have the equipment. And there's ways of how you can do that, as I list on icqpodcast.com. Well, we need to thank our very kind donors this episode. As I say, they're the guys that see value in what we do and sends a kind donation to help us pay our way and keep us advert free. So we'd like to thank Kevin, Kilo Charlie 1, Oscar India Zulu, Gary Whiskey Alpha 0, Victor Mike Victor, Bob Colzoni, and Roy Jones, VK6, Romeo, as I say, for kindly supporting the show, keeping us advert free, and as I say, helping us pay our way. If you found value in what we've done today, all you need to do is visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate, where say you find a monetary value of something you found in the show, pop it our way, and say it's always greatly appreciated. We'd like to also thank our kind colleagues who helped us out with the news roundtable in this episode. So we'd like to thank Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima, Ed, DD5, Lima Papa, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, and Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, as say for joining the news roundtable. Many thanks, guys, for taking part of us there. Right, well, I think that just about wraps up all our notices for everybody now over this last episode. I think all that's left to do now is to send you off to the kitchen to make sure you continue paying up front for that tub of Ben & Jerry's you're hoping for, and to make Mrs. B a cup of tea and find her a nice treat of a chocolate biscuit to go with it.
Yeah, certainly will, Colin. Not a problem. I'm going to make them a cup of tea, and we're going to sit down and have Vicky and chill out. And yeah, I've already seen the Ben & Jerry's in the fridge, in the freezer, so it's there waiting for my birthday, Colin. Hi. Anyway, have a good one, and we'll do it all again soon, won't we?
We sure will, guys. 73's all.
73.